topic for this week is staying resilient during a crisis. Crises are now being judged not only by financial and ethical standards, but by whether the company handled its crisis effectively in the eyes of Wall Street, Madison Avenue, the plaintiff's bar, and 24-hour-a-day cable news. This week's focus is on crisis management and reputation management by looking at modern case studies of organizations who have done it well and at some who have done it not as well. The focus of this lesson is on what works, what doesn't, and why in modern crisis management. This is not your mother's crisis management. The world is changing, and to be resilient, how we manage crises must also change. We must move from the conventional public relations approach to a political model of crisis management. This assumes the threat of motivated adversaries who don't care whether you do the right thing. They care about defeating you. Crisis management is unpleasant work. The news is intrinsically bad. Your reward is usually just relief. And there are no rewards for bad news averted. And there are no rewards or no bonuses given out when the disaster doesn't happen. Remembering this key thing, it assumes the threat of motivated adversaries who don't care whether you do the right thing. And you're looking at adversaries like competitors, lawyers, the news media, politicians, whistleblowers, corporate stalkers, NGOs, and even your random blogger. I wanted to give you a little bit of a graphic. The title of the book that is really the core content for this lesson is entitled Damage Control. And the term damage control originated when the Navy had to grapple with a new technology, the torpedo, and its devastating impact on a vessel. Even if torpedoed, the vessel could sometimes recover and carry out its mission, if the crew had the right skill set. Only in the recent media age has the term been applied to public relations and vulcanized to imply that a slick trick can undo the destruction of a metaphorical torpedo's impact. Central to the notion of crisis management is the idea of a high-tech war room complete with huge blinking maps and specialists who can retrieve obscure data from around the globe with the click of a mouse. In reality, it's more like Alice in Wonderland. You feel alone and betrayed. You are in a state of disbelief, having never predicted that this would be your crisis. And is the outcome of this situation destined to be your legacy? Falling into a hole only to encounter strange creatures who mean you harm is not really where we want to be. Looking at who survives a crisis, there are some things that are consistent. One, of course, having strong leader or leaders. We've seen that. Questioning conventional PR wisdom. You have to go beyond what you normally would get from your public relations firm. Those organizations that are flexible and that can commit significant resources. You don't ignore the problem, but you act on it. Again, I'm reviewing what we talked about last week. They have to have a high threshold for pain. You can't just collapse. You have to be able to deal with it and keep moving on. And they said think in terms of baby steps. In other words, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. We're not trying to solve the whole thing all at once. They also have to know themselves. These organizations have to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are and what they can and what they cannot do. And believe that corporate defense is an exercise in moral authority. And then, of course, you got to just be lucky sometimes. The world doesn't run on strategies, it runs on emotions. Egos, biases, passions, dreams, jealousies, resentments, gut reactions. Most organizations under siege devote far too much attention to strategy and not enough on the key personalities. Political scientists and social psychologists are starting to recognize the canyon that separates why people believe they vote for a candidate or like a person and the real reasons they do. The essence is this: people follow or reject people, not rationally processed analyses. It comes down to pairing of personality and climate. In other words, do we like you in the context of the challenge at hand? The character of the person in charge of the crisis becomes synonymous with the crisis management strategy, and the public rarely can separate the event from the personalities that dominate the event.